Coming up on Garden Talk.
As soon as a root busts out and is exposed to the air, it's getting colonized by bacteria. So whether it's negative, bad bacteria like Pythium, root rots, or it's positive bacteria like Bacillus that are actually going to feed the plant, you've got to give some kind of place for those guys to grow. 60% cocoa, 20% perlite, 20% castings, and then I will put a little bit of rock dust in there, like that azomite or just glacial rock dust. There's very specific mycorrhizae that work for very specific plants. So like you'll see ectomycorrhizae on some labels. Unless you're growing pine trees, ectomycorrhizae ain't gonna help you. I want people to have success. You can grow the biggest damn tree you want, but if it wilts on, 5 days before harvest because you forgot to water it, guess what?
What's up, everybody? If you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're tuned into the Garden Talk podcast. This is episode number 24. In this episode, I interview Scotty Real from the Dude Grows Show. He has been gardening for 30 years, and he grows a variety of plants, such as bamboo, palm trees, medicinal, and hot peppers. I'm sure many of you know him from his show, The Dude Grows Show, which is on YouTube and on podcast platforms. In this episode, he talks about growing in Coco Coir, specifically his style of growing a cocoa, and how he likes to keep things simple. Big thanks to all of you who support this podcast through Patreon. If you'd like to support, you can do so by going to patreon.com/MrGrowIt. Before we get into the episode, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Dutch Pro is a sponsor of the podcast. Coupon code MrGrowIt10DP will get you a discount on their products. They are a plant fertilizer company that has been around for over 30 years. They originated in Amsterdam, and their nutrients are available in several countries across the world. They have everything needed for proper plant nutrition, from base nutrients to additives and pH regulators. I will leave a link to Dutch Pro's Amazon store down in the description section below. And don't forget to use coupon code MrGrowIt10DP for a discount on their products. Thanks to Spider Farmer for sponsoring this podcast. They have board-style LED grow lights, bar-style LED grow lights, grow tents, inline fans, and carbon filters. They also have complete grow tent kits, which include lighting, a ventilation system, grow pots, a trellis net, a timer, and a monitor for both temperature and humidity. Coupon code MrGrowIt5 will get you a discount on their products, and I'll leave a link to their Amazon store down in the description section below. Alright, now let's get into the episode. And we are back. Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast. Today I am joined with Scotty Real from the Dude Grows Show. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm psyched, man. I'm really psyched to be here hanging out with another content creator. I dig your style, dude. I dig your style.
Thanks, man. It's an honor to have you on here. I mean, you're somebody who I've looked up to. I mean, you guys have been around. I think I first started watching Dude Grows Show back in 2014. I believe you guys started in 2013. So, and that was when you guys had audio only. Remember those days?
Yeah, I ran into dude at a party, and he says, I'm starting my own growers podcast. And then I was like, no, I'm doing that. I saw Joe Rogan first. It was like a couple months after Rogan came out. He's telling everybody to do it. And sure enough, it was so much fun. It was honestly, the dude and I with all this stuff, it was, I don't know, maybe it was 2013. Everything's blowing up here in Colorado. And we're talking about it on the phone for an hour and a half a night. And we're like, this is the show. This is it right here. So we put mics in front of us with Audacity, and it's funny. That was when the early few hundred versions of that or shows of that is like us alone doing what we can with the computer. Then Sean showed up, Grow Guru showed up about 300-400 episodes in, and we actually got to where we could do video. It was a huge upgrade for us. But what a joy.
Yeah, the progression has been awesome over the years, just to kind of see you guys get better and better, and the continuous improvement. And the show it is today is it's incredible. So definitely appreciate you guys doing that for us in the community here, because it's definitely entertaining and it brings a lot of education to the community as well. So thank you for that.
I'll be right back at you. I was hanging out last night. I watched Vader and the Painted Lady with you. Man, there's not that much great content to absorb, at least not if you turn on the TV. So YouTube is that double-edged sword. You've got to watch yourself on there, but I'll be damned if there isn't a ton of great information to consume or just people to hang out with. The idea with our show is to have people to hang out with. Hopefully you got some like-minded folks that are hanging out. Half the time we're talking growing, and half the time we're just talking culture, having someone to hang out with, whether you're in your grow or in the greenhouse or in your car,
Exactly. So before we get to our topic today, we're going to talk about kind of the easiest way to grow, simplified growing. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into gardening?
I got into gardening by trying to make a better product. I saw the medicine that was out there. It didn't even remind me of a plant. It reminded me of a product. And I thought to myself, how can it comes with seeds. How can I do a better job with this? How can I make better medicine for me and to share with my friends? It really is medicine to me. It always has been. So, that brought me to a heck of a long journey. I started in 1991, basically learning, going to the grocery store, buying the Hyponex, potting mix, what you could find at Kmart or Walmart, whatever it was back then. And, literally just starting from scratch like that. And it took, it was actually a journey. I started with putting a seed in some soil. And then I started getting enamored with the technology. Hey, there's there's a machine that will grow this for you, and it'll grow these, beautiful, beautiful quality flowers. And that, you can't really treat flowers or something living like a machine. It took me 20 years to figure that out. I would grow in deep water culture. I would grow in all these different unnatural systems that treated a plant like a machine. And I would grow decent quality, but it just wouldn't, it was just missing something. And when I learned how to treat plants, like something living, whether it's more like a pet than a machine, I was really able to get better. That's when I really hit my stride of growing. And I've been doing it. 30 years? Jesus, 30 years, man.
It's a long time, for sure.
Yeah, and it's been an evolution. I mean, I was originally growing medicinal herbs, and then I kind of got enamored by, I bought my first house, and I went to go buy a privacy fence, and somebody says, you know what, if you actually put bamboo up, it's natural, and it's a natural privacy fence. And I was like, bamboo? Who the hell heard of that? I heard of palm trees. I'm from South Florida. But bamboo was a niche, and I ended up buying 20 acres, taking the very simple lessons that I knew about growing from growing medicinal herbs and bringing them into bamboo. And it was kind of funny. I really actually got my butt handed to me because I would go, first thing I wanted to do was put 20 acres on liquid feed. Just like we do. We go buy bottled nutrients. They were like, you're going to go broke, buddy. What do you want? 1,000 liters of 3 containers of liquid feed. So very quickly you kind of learn how things scale up and what works and what doesn't work in those situations. So it was a heck of an education, man.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that about you. So let me ask you, a lot of people want different things out of growing, right? Like some people, I think a lot of people jump to the assumption that everything's about yield. Everybody just wants the biggest possible flowers. It's not really the case for everybody, though. I know some people that chase after taste, smell. There's some people I mentioned in a past podcast. One of the things I strive for is efficiency, having an efficient grow. For you, what's the goal with growing?
To get the harvest. I say that really it's a tie between to get clean medicine for me and my friends to enjoy. But when I'm talking to other people about growing, even when I'm thinking about myself, it is to get to harvest. It is not that easy to provide your plants with 100, 110, 115 days worth of very consistent environment, food, watering, IPM, all that stuff to go for 3 months, 3.5 months. It's not easy. I mean, if you're just hand watering and you miss 2 days, I wasn't feeling so well a couple days ago, and I just didn't have the energy to get up and water my plants. And I was like, if I don't get up and water my plants, it's 11:50, it's 11:35. My lights go off at midnight, and I better go out there and water them or they're going to all die. It's like, it's not that easy to have 100, 120 days of success. So that is what I really tried, the whole growing simplified thing. I want people to have success. You can grow the biggest damn tree you want, but if it wilts on, 5 days before harvest because you forgot to water it, guess what? That really is the goal. Growing big plants and growing all that stuff is really a matter of strain now. What you pick, if you want to pick, I don't know, do they still make Big Bud? Or Blue Dream or Gorilla Glue, one of those giant ones. You can grow, you can pick what you want. There's all sorts of things. Some people want to do that. Some people just want what I want, which is to share great medicine with our friends, our family, those in need. It happens here in Colorado, and it is a joy, and it is such a different experience than it is in commercial markets, I'll say.
That makes sense. All right, now let's get into indoor gardening and your style of keeping things easy. Let's start with the medium. What medium do you like to grow in when you're keeping things simple?
Excellent. And cocoa. I love telling people about cocoa. Coco Coir, first of all, it's renewable. I was in Costa Rica recently, and between there and Florida, you'll never see so many coconuts. Coconut palm, very easy to grow. It doesn't take a ton of resources. Grows the coconut, the world's biggest seed. First of all, I think that's a trip. But when you peel that thing, all that pith and all that stuff that comes off it is great growing media. I mean, if you think about it, that just came out of the earth. That was just grown. Your growing media was just grown, as opposed to peat, where I used to live, have a place in Florida. When I would drive by, there was a peat bog, and they would actually be mining the peat. They would actually have a bulldozer go in, and they were tearing out the earth. That peat takes, I don't know, millions of years to become peat. And it kind of, if I got my choice of a year to get coconut husks, out of off a coconut, or millions of years of peat that they're mining from the earth, I'd rather do the coconut. But that's just honestly, ethically, I guess, the performance is way better, man. Coco Coir holds moisture and air way better than peat does. Peat will compact, and it's really hard to get a lot of air into peat, or at least you better aerate it well. As to where cocoa, you can take just cocoa with no aeration, no perlite, anything like that, and use it as a media, and it works awesome. And so it holds a lot of air, but the best thing about it is even when you let it dry, it re-wets very easily. I don't know if you've ever used peat. I'm sure you've used peat. For the listeners, peat is one of those things. If you screw up and let it get a little bit too dry, as to where you can kind of see it's pulled away from the side of the container, you are going to have a difficult time, or it's going to take you a very long time of just dropping a tiny bit of water on there, letting it absorb until that peat re-wets. So they call hydrophobic it becomes. I'm scared of water, man. It's just so much easier to re-wet cocoa. And I love cocoa. When I first came to Colorado, I was fairly intimidated. I came here in 2009. It was the backpack days, and you really had to have your act together. And when I came here, I looked for anything I could. I talked to my buddy Corey over at Way to Grow, is the owner there. I said, come on, give me any advantage I can. And he said, can of cocoa, can of A and B, and 10-gallon smart pots. Pretty damn easy system, man. You pour equal parts A and B in there. You test it to 1,000 ppm. You make sure your pH is okay. You pour that water on there a couple times a week, and you get the harvest. It was pretty damn cool.
So you're using the bagged cocoa instead of the bricked cocoa and then hydrating, or what?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I've tried all sorts of ways. I have definitely ordered the brick cocoa off Amazon and been like, yeah, come on, let's see how cheap. I'm telling you, I want to see how inexpensive, simple we can make growing for people, so that somebody can say, dude, I've got a balcony or I've got a porch and I've always wanted to grow something. I tell you what, this looks so damn easy. You water it, for some of these bottom feeding buckets, you water them once a week, or you water it every 10 days. I can leave it outside on my patio. I didn't know that. And I'll actually grow something that I can use. That's kind of that is the message that I want to put out there. If I can inspire someone, me and my buddy Soup the Gardener, shout out to growerslove.com. He's a really smart guy, really great with organics. We want everyone to have a 2x2 tent, whether it's a 2x2 or 4x4, but to just have one plant, even if it's just to experience what it's like to care for a plant. I don't know if it's as intense as caring for a dog, or maybe similar to a cat, I would say, But man, to care for something like that, it really does something to you.
Absolutely. Now, with the cocoa, are you amending anything in it to begin? Or are you just taking it straight out of the bag and then putting it into the container?
In the beginning, I was just taking it straight out of the bag. I was relying on, it becomes really nutrient dependent, I think, when you do that. When I bought Canna nutrients, I definitely bought Canna cocoa. I do believe there's something. I'm not a chemist. I've never even made it to chemistry class. But from my guru, Grow Guru is my co-host on the Do Grow show. He's the guy that went to college for all this stuff. There are different buffering agents, and cocoa has a bunch of potassium in it, so they buffer it, and so it works with the nutrients. That's why when you get a nutrient line, they usually have a cocoa. That's where I started with. Of course, when you're baking a cake, you start out with a recipe, right? And then you start saying, let me put a little more sugar in it. Let me put some purple food color. No, I'm just kidding. But you start with a recipe. So after, I like cocoa. It didn't remind me of soil, though. When I would look at it, I started learning about soil microbes. I started learning that nature fills a vacuum. So I would have problems. I tried all sorts of stuff. Deep water culture, straight up cocoa, which is hydroponics. And what I would find is when I didn't have a real media in there, when I didn't have something that at least resembled soil, I left myself open to pathogens. I left myself open to pythium, just different root rots. I didn't even know what they were. I just know I'd show up one day and one of my plants was just dead from the inside, So I was just trying to figure that out. And what I learned was, like I said, nature fills a vacuum. If I cut my finger and I sterilize the cut, and then I sterilize some soil. I just bake it, bring it out of the oven where it's baked and sterilized. If I stick my finger in there, my finger's not going to stay sterile. There's going to be infection, pathogens that come. Well, where do they come from? I don't know. Bacteria is everywhere. So my point is, it's difficult. It's impossible to keep something completely sterile. I mean, it takes a lot of equipment to do that. It's like a scientific thing. As soon as you bring things out, as soon as a root, busts out and exposed to the air, it's getting colonized by bacteria. So whether it's negative, bad bacteria like pythium, root rots, or it's positive bacteria like bacillus that are actually going to feed the plant, you've got to give some kind of place for those guys to grow. Those microbes, those living soil microbes to grow. Rock wool, pretty difficult. Rock wool's like spun stone, so it doesn't want to do it. You can maybe get mycorrhizae on there, but it really doesn't want to colonize on rock wool. On the expanded pellets, the clay pellets, it's really difficult to grow any kind of beneficial bacteria on there. So the only things that'll grow on there, or what loves to grow on there and colonize, is the bad stuff, the root-eating stuff, the pythium and the rots and whatnot. So I really started learning that the key to whatever you're growing is to add some kind to emulate soil, to add some kind of organic material to it. So for me, it was earthworm castings. Earthworm castings loaded with microbes. It's either loaded with microbes, it's dead microbes, it's a home for microbes. And even when those microbes die, they just turn into soil organic matter, just more organic. That's what you want. That's what soil makes, is it makes organic matter. It breaks down leaf tissue and whatnot, and it takes that organic matter but turns it into soil organic matter. Food for the microbes, home for the microbes. So that's what I learned. I started adding more and more castings in. I'm to about 20% castings, to about, trying to think, I want to say it's about 67, about 60. I don't really measure that hard, I might forget as I'm dumping the bucket, but about 60% castings, 20% perlite. I'm forgetting something. I know I'll put a little bit of biochar in there. Hang on, I wrote this down. 60% cocoa, 20% perlite, 20% castings. And then I will put a little bit of rock dust in there, like that azomite or just glacial rock dust. And all that is, it's just a little bit of micronutrients in there that the plant can access or the microbes can access. Just a tiny bit of that works. You need literally parts per billion of some of those things. And then one thing I've been playing with is biochar. You been messing with biochar lately?
Yeah, I've had my hands on biochar. I mixed it in on a couple different grows. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I've been getting a shout out to Biochar Now, which is a Colorado company that actually makes a really good biochar. You can sometimes it looks like charcoal or, something that came out of the bottom of the fire. But these are beautiful little pelletized activated biochar. And what that does, it's just got a bunch of little holes, just like the carbon filters. Excuse me. The carbon filters have a bunch of, they're very porous. The carbon is in there. So as the odors go through it, they're captured. There's just a whole bunch of air in there. Well, all those air spaces can also be used as homes for microbes. So by just adding a little bit of biochar in there, A, it aerates, but B, it gives such a great home for microbes. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been playing with lately, and just been having great results, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I watched one of your recent videos, and man, you grow some massive plants indoors. I was looking at, I don't know how tall you are, but these plants had to have been just as tall as you, if not taller than you.
Well, I'm only 4 foot tall, so I mean, I do that just. No, I'm just kidding.
But you go some big plants. I was wondering, what size containers are those plants in?
Those are in 5-gallon Hempy Buckets, and I'll get into that in a second. The reason I grow plants is just because of how the laws work. Or the reason I grow very large plants is how the laws work, you know? I want to show people that you can take a 2x2 or a 2x4 tent, and it's going to take you, 100, 120 days, whatever it is, 3-4 months to get through to that harvest. But that is a worthy investment, that you can make that worth your while, that you can make your own very clean medicinal or medicine without going to a store, without having to, venture in the unknown. I mean, we're talking medicine here. I mean, you can wink about it all you want. People might make them feel good, but this is real medicine for people, and especially for sick people. If they're inhaling, if somebody wanted to make sure that they got the harvest, so they sprayed Eagle 20 on there, which is a pesticide that's for ornamental use only, or they had spider mites and they didn't do the right thing, or maybe they needed to cull their crop and they didn't, and they just sprayed some poison, a imidacloprid poison on it. None of those things have been tested for us to eat. I mean, maybe they have been tested for us to eat, but they have not been tested for us to smoke. So that's a really frightening thing, and that's what makes me want to control my own supply chain, I guess, and the supply chain for other people who I help.
Gotcha. So 5-gallon Hempy Buckets. We'll talk about the Hempy Buckets in detail in a little bit. But I know you do start in the small solo cups, and then you you must transplant up eventually into those containers. Can you talk about when you transplant?
Yeah, I have a kind of unique system. I hope it's not too complicated. I'll try to share it, but it's a 12 plant system. It basically has 4 stages. So the idea is to harvest 3 nice plants a month. I have a little 6x12, so it's something that I think people could accomplish with a couple tents or something like that. I have a 6 foot by 2 foot veg. So just a length or the width of a closet, and then 2 foot is my veg. And in there, I grow solo cups. I have a couple mothers. I actually use a shelving unit. And I grow a couple mothers on the bottom. I will propagate those into cups, just into the cup and cup method. I'll let them grow for it's all predicated on a month. So I'll take the clone, let it grow in the cup for a month. Then I'll transplant that to a 3-gallon. Keep it in veg for another month. Then after that, I transplant it to a 5-gallon, which is called a Hempy bucket or a sip bucket. It's basically a bottom-feeding bucket, just a little bit more forgiving with the water. I'll transplant it to a 5-gallon, and then I move it into flowering very shortly afterwards. The idea is every month I'm harvesting 3 plants and moving 3 new plants into flowering. And it's for a 6x12, it is a yielder. I mean, that system will really push it. I keep on forgetting the original question.
It was transplant.
Solo, and usually I try to do month intervals. Solo to a 3-gallon to a 5-gallon, out to flowering, 60 days and they're gone. And every month I'm continuing to do that, and it's a perpetual harvest.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That's a pretty cool system that you got in place there.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying to do this to where I use slow-release fertilizers, where I incorporate just a simple slow-release fertilizer in there. I mean, it is... I was going to say it's so easy that my friends could take care of it while I'm on vacation, but I guess it's not that easy, man.
And that's what we're going to talk about next. We talked about your mix, your initial mix, kind of getting going, what containers to use, transplanting. Now, nutrients. Let's talk about what are you using for nutrients, base nutrients, additives, microbial inoculants. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been growing since 1991, so I've been through the mix, and I don't know if a ton has changed. 3-part general hydroponics. I heard you and I think it was Painted Lady laughing about back in the day. Like that was the only option. You went to the grocery store, you got 3-part general hydroponics. It worked. It left you wide open for pathogens. It was the kind of thing that it wasn't kind of addressing the roots or any soil organic matter or that kind of stuff. It was basically either a rock wool. It was designed for a rock wool slab system or hydroponics, but it worked. It worked. It was fairly no frills. But then I started going to a little bit more boutique stuff. I'll fast forward to when I went to Colorado. Started doing a little bit more boutique stuff. I think that was the Canna A&B, which I think I would consider that a boutique brand, no?
Sure.
Yes, it's certainly not, bargain basement price, but went to that. Hung out there for a few years. As far as a very simple system goes, I mean, they are by no means a sponsor or anything like that, but just Canna is clean product. You put equal parts A and B in there. You match it up with their cocoa, and it's pretty easy to have success. As long as you water them and have good watering practices, which I don't know if you ever talk about that. It's so damn easy to teach people how to water. You pick the plant up when it's saturated, and then you go back and you water when it's about half that weight. I mean, I love being able to, because overwater and underwatering, those are things that keep people from getting the harvest. And then they end up throwing the equipment in the closet, and there's their growing career down the tubes.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I don't think I've heard it that way before, to saturate it and then to, what'd you say, let it go to halfway and then water it
Yeah, it's
again.
about halfway. You won't get in trouble. You can kind of play with it there, but yeah, I mean, that's just a simple rule of thumb I like to talk to people about.
And that's specifically in cocoa, in your method, right? So if soil, you'd probably do something different, right?
It's a rule of thumb. It's meant to be, put it this way, it'll probably keep you from grossly overwatering whatever you're growing. That is the biggest problem, I think, is people want to love things to death. For me, I would do, I had the general hydroponics 3-part, and then I would get root rot. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, what can I do for that, man? I better go get some HydroGuard and put that on there. I better go get this product and put it on. Man, they're still not looking good. Let me put some more on. Moron, man. You're a moron for putting more on, okay? You need to listen to the plant, man. The plant, you can't just keep, it's like if I'm just so stuffed. I just got back from the buffet and I feel terrible. And I'm like, I feel terrible, guys. And you go, well, eat more. Here's a steak. It's not going to help, man. So actually, that's where it comes back to understanding plants are alive and understanding that they need balance. They need the right proportions of air, water, carbon dioxide in that air, which really is the macronutrient. But air, water, and just a little bit of nutrients. I mean, they don't need, and when I say a little bit, 1,000, 800, 900 parts per million, but compared to how much carbon it's taking in, that's not that much, in air and water it's using. The nutrients are just a little bit there.
So are you following their feeding schedule for that? Just doing like a reduced dose, and then are you doing any additives or just the base nutrients?
This was a bit ago. I will tell you, I forgot my last year or so. I did want to get some so I was doing pretty good with whether it's Canna A and B, that kind of stuff. I was doing pretty good with it commercially, no complaints. Was I going to win any competitions with it? No. And when I started talking to really great growers, I was like, hey man, how can I step it up a bit more? And one guy, his name's Jaron from New Millennium. You should actually see if you can have him on the show. He's a wealth of knowledge. But he would come over and he would just show me that he was at the next level. And I asked him, I said, how do I get there? I actually ask a lot of growers when they show up and they're at that 9, 10 where I'm just salivating. I'm like, what's going on there? What are you doing? And so Jaron gave me a unique answer. He says that it's the nutrients. He's got New Millennium is quite a bit different than what I'm used to. I'm used to slow release fertilizer that you incorporate in and kind of get a couple of additives from there, just to kind of tweak it. His is, I want to say it's 9 or 10 bottles. There are some interesting things there, but you control the CalMag, you can add more P and K if you want. There's Fulvix, there's that winter frost product, which is an actually interesting thing. That's a good tip, is winter frost, even if you don't use New Millennium. That product will make your plants all finish, different strains finish at the same time. It's really valuable for someone like me that's doing perpetual harvest. Things got to be out of there in a month. So I was playing with that, but for me, I'm not trying to, I had to make a decision. Am I really trying to grow top-notch, 10 flower that's going to win competitions and going to have people beating my door down? No, I'm really not. I don't have a lot of ego in it. I just want good medicine. I want people to grow good medicine that they can enjoy, that their friends can enjoy. The more, the better. The more people that enjoy good medicine, the better this world is going to be. So it doesn't have to be 9 or 10. You can grow a plant that's a 6 or a 7, and that's great, for you and your friends. It's great for me. It's great for the world, man. So, yeah, I was just thinking that it's a little bit complicated for me. It was 9 bottles, man. So I went back to just my slow-release fertilizer, controlled-release fertilizers.
Gotcha. And then one of the products, which I assume is in your garden, is something I got right here. So Recharge, these are Microbes, and you are the owner of this company, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about Recharge and kind of how you incorporate in your garden?
Yeah, absolutely. It brings such a smile to my face, that product does. That was something I formulated with, I was in the bamboo and learning at the bamboo nursery. I have 20 acres, tens of thousands of plants, and the fertilizer costs on there are unbelievable. I mean, you're talking, 6 digits in fertilizer to keep everything really pumping out of there a year. And I started hearing about red tide. I'm from Florida. Red tide, the fish were dying. It has a lot to do with the sugar corporations releasing their fertilizer into the oceans. And it made me I'm a farmer. I have 20 acres. I'm spending $100,000+ on fertilizer every year. I am part of that problem. So I started figuring out I don't have the organic. I've got like 2% organic matter in my soil. There's no way that I could do what I do just using organics. It would take me 20 years to build that soil, and there's no way I could have production on it like that. So I'm kind of locked in. I'm in sand. So with my bamboo nursery, I'm locked into using synthetic nutrients. So if I'm locked into that, at least let me keep them in my field. At least let me keep them at the root zone. And that's where I really started studying. First, the first microbe that everybody learns about, or that I learned about, was mycorrhizae, which is that funny sounding word. It's essentially a root fungus, though. And I don't have anything but gross analogies. But if you get a fungus on your fingernail and your fingernail grows, does the fungus just magically go away? No, it keeps on growing on the fingernail as it grows. Well, that's a pathogenic fungus. Now let's talk about a beneficial fungus. Let's talk about something that mycorrhizae is a fungus that's actually a coating. I think of a bare wire, and I think of how dangerous a bare wire is. And then I think about a coating. If you just put a coating on that wire. And that's what it does. It coats the roots, except it's like a fuzzy coating. And all the mycorrhizae has this fuzz. It has these root hairs that come out. And that's where the nutrient is absorbed. And the nutrient is absorbed on those root hairs. So not only do you create massive, thousands of times more absorption points for the nutrient, but you've also increased the whole surface area of that root. So it's huge, man. So the only thing is that mycorrhizae, like Glomus and Erraticis, there's very specific mycorrhizae that work for very specific plants. So like you'll see ectomycorrhizae on some labels. Unless you're growing pine trees, ectomycorrhizae ain't going to help you. You can see 60 different species of mycorrhizae. If you're growing, specific plants, specific medicinal plants, you need Erraticis. That's the one that forms that bond. So there is a lot of fluff on a lot of labels and whatnot, but that's the one you want to look for. What I really learned about what keeps the nutrient in the soil, though, is the bacteria. Another gross analogy that I got. I don't know. I need someone to clean up my analogies. But when you wake up in the morning, You got stuff stuck on your teeth. That's bacteria stuck on your teeth. You can't just wash them out with water. You can't just take a glass of water and be like, all right, I'm all good. I'm ready to go to my day. You'll have a lot of bacteria still stuck on your breath. You have to brush them off. You have to actually take something, a brush and, with some toothpaste, some, aggregate, and brush those things off, because the glomalin, the bacteria make this glomalin, they stick. So they stick to your teeth. Guess what else the bacteria will stick to? Roots, soil particles. Specifically in the soil, if you've got these sticky bacteria, things can get absorbed, which it goes inside, or adsorbed, which it just sticks. Adsorbed just a D instead of a B, and it means it just sticks to the outside of you instead of being on the inside of you. These bacteria get these nutrient particles, even these synthetic nutrient particles, they stick to them. Even if they die in the soil, whether they move to the root zone or they just die in the soil, it's like a sink. It's like your soil's the battery. My buddy Soup the Gardener invented that. Your soil is the battery, and the more nutrient you can hold in it, whether it's through, usually through bacteria is the way or soil organic matter is the way you're going to hold it. But the stronger your soil is, the more nutrient dense your soil is. And the last analogy I got is, if you're think about Coco Coir or something like that, or you're thinking about whatever soil. It's when we use the synthetic nutrients, they're salts, right? That's what they are. The ionic form of nutrients, whether it's General Hydroponics or any of the brands, they're all salt-based. When you go to the beach and you have salt all over you and you wash off on those showers, it's complete the opposite experience of brushing your teeth, right? You don't have to brush stuff off. All you got to do is let that water touch you. The salt runs right off. That's why it's so easy to leach soils. That's why when you deal with soils without microbes, they tell you to water till 10% runoff and all that stuff, because they're trying to just very easily, all it takes 10% extra water to wash all those salts out. And where are they going? They go down the drain. If you're in a commercial facility, 20 acres or whatever it is, they go down and they become somebody else's problem. And if you're buying those for $30, $40, $50 a gallon, why not keep them in the root zone and keep them where the plants can use them?
That makes sense, for sure. Yeah, a lot of good information there. There's definitely some things I didn't know. So definitely appreciate you dropping those knowledge bombs there for us. But Recharge, great product. I've been using this since 2016 in my garden, off and on. I need to use, if I use the same thing over and over again in my videos, people will just get bored. So I've been using this kind of off and on in videos. This is something that I really get a lot of value out of in my garden. I mean, it has everything from beneficials, bacteria, mycorrhizae, kelp, molasses, humic and fulvic acids, and even amino acids. So it's really loaded with a bunch of good stuff in there. Definitely recommend it for sure.
Man, you mind if I say something about that?
Go ahead. Sure.
Okay. See, I even asked before I started again. When I got into the industry, everything was separate. There were separate bottles, for A and B and fulvic and humic. I remember when, I hope it's okay to say this, no begrudging to anyone that comes in marketing products, but when advanced nutrients came in, there was 30 bottles, I want to say. Maybe it was 20 bottles, and everything was priced $30, $40. I don't even think it was a gallon. Shit was expensive. And I just started thinking to myself, this starting to smell bullshit here, man. I have a 20-acre bamboo nursery, and not even the world. I know some world-class growers of some very hard-to-grow ornamentals. Nobody's using 20 bottles. So I just started thinking about it, and I said, well, what can you combine? Can you combine mycorrhizae with bacteria? Yeah, you actually can. Can you, instead of growing them on on clay, can you grow them on kelp? Yeah, you actually can, man. Can you provide a food for them, a molasses? Yeah, okay, cool. It was all these extra things. Okay, hey, well, amino acids, if we add an amino acid K complex in there, will it affect anything, or will it give us any beneficial results? Yeah, it actually will. We tested and it will. All these things to be able to make a product that actually adds some value, that actually separates you from going and buying 4 or 5 different bottles. It was kind of my homage to making this industry a little bit more honest, man, a little bit more, following what growers do in commercial grow settings. It did bother me, man. They separate, when it's humic and you're buying that for $40 a bottle, and then fulvic you're buying for $40 a bottle. and they don't bother telling you that fulvic is just a lighter fraction of humic. It's I don't like when people promote ignorance for profit. That's what I'm hoping we can change in this industry. And by the way, it is changing. It absolutely is.
Yeah, I've seen it as well. It definitely is changing for the better. Absolutely. Cool. I want to ask you about a couple other things when growing in cocoa. So some folks, they'll monitor the pH, ppm, or EC. Are you monitoring those values? And if so, what do you aim for?
When I use liquid nutrients, I do. Right now I'm using these. It's fairly new for me. I'm taking some of the lessons I've used over at the Bamboo Nursery, which is liquid feed for dessert, and then your steak and potatoes just comes from for me, it's a controlled release granular. But when I'm doing liquid feed, pretty easy rule of thumb, just in containers, about 1,000 ppm. When I'm doing a bottom feeding or a Hempy bucket, they're sitting in that nutrient water, so I'll go down to 700 to 800 ppm down there because they're constantly just being bathed in it. But yeah, ppm pretty easy. I have one of those Blue Lab truncheon meters. It's easy enough to measure ppm if you're doing liquid feed. I will say pH, a little bit more of a pain in the butt. Do you have a pH meter, sir?
Oh yeah, of course.
The Blue Lab with the... I have one where it's... Which one you got?
I got the Apera.
Okay, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I had, for years and years, I'd have these Blue Lab meters. And they're like laboratory equipment. I'm sitting there in my grow, and this is legit laboratory equipment. There's calibration solution that you have to put in there. There's storage solution. There's all this stuff that made it a pain in the butt. And a guy like me was buying new probes every 6 months. $150 probe I'm buying because the water ran out in mine or whatever. The solution ran out. So I have been able to get away from that, thankfully. Thankfully, when I started learning about microbes and started using recharge, I kind of noticed that the plants were less sensitive to pH. And I started using my pH meter less and less. And then I was just like, hey, everything's going fine. If there's a problem, I'll pull it out. And what I learned was that microbes, remember, they're lining the roots and they're buffering the nutrient in the soil. So they can absorb or adsorb nutrients at a much wider range of pHs than just the roots. The roots, those bare roots, was it like a 5.5 to 6.8 pH range? And there's nutrients, specific nutrients that are absorbed as those pHs fluctuate a little bit. So it was really a joy for me to be able to throw out the pH pen. I'll say that. And granted, you need to know what you're starting with. Everybody, I make it sound too easy. Throw out your pH pen and use microbes. If you're starting with water that's 9 or you're starting with water that's super acidic, of course you need to address that. But for us over here in the Rockies, man, it's some great water here. So it comes in about neutral, right about 7. And I'm able to just... Actually, the New Millennium nutrients that I'm using, and I think you were talking about this painted lady, there's something, they get, the nutrient guys got it down to where when you mix it to 1,000 ppm, usually your pH is pretty stable, or at least it's formulated for, somewhere around neutral. So I don't use a pH pen anymore. I let the microbes, kind of be the fudge factor, buffer them for me. And I've had good results. And that's been a challenge for me, is to look people in the face and say, man, you don't have to use your pH pen anymore. Yeah, they're bull. Yeah, bull. I don't know about that, Scotty, but it's true.
Yeah, I've used Blue Planet nutrients, and then a mixture on that comes out to be 5.8 pH, and that's what I like for cocoa. So that it was kind of hands off. Really didn't have to use a pH pen at all when growing in cocoa, specifically because my water came in at whatever it was. But when I added the nutrients, it would drop it down to 5.8 pH. It's just the perfect. And I would just do 5.8 pH going in every time and just completely ignore the runoff pH. And that worked great for me. So, it can definitely be simplified on that avenue for sure.
Hey, talk about that, the runoff pH. People always talk about collecting your runoff and testing the parts per million and pH on it. That can be, particularly with parts per million, that can be very deceiving. It's like we talked about the shower washing the salt right off you. I mean, I've had runoff before where the plants are, just because I hadn't water till runoff for a while, where they're off the chart. It's over 2,000 ppm, but the plants are still looking good. And it really is, that's a deceptive one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into real deep on this, right? So it's not going to really, the nutrients aren't going to show up unless they're in an ionic form, right? So
Right.
if people are putting in top dressing nutrients, for example, those aren't in a ionic form just yet. The microbes have to break it down. So some people will get a runoff number and they'll realize it's way higher than what they put in. Well, there's nutrients in there that are breaking down in the meantime. And then there's folks that are out there, they're like, oh, I have a 2,000 ppm or 2,500 ppm, but my plants look fine, or I need to flush. Well, how big is your plant? How big is that root system, right? I mean, because you're measuring the runoff, but if you have a real small plant in there with a small root system that hasn't reached everything, well, then you probably are going to be fine. So yeah, I totally get what you mean by it can be deceiving. I know the runoff ppm values, I kind of just get a guesstimate of what could be in your medium. And there are general ranges that people can follow to kind of help ensure that they're not overfeeding or underfeeding. So you can break it down to kind of like a beginner to simplify things. But yeah, certainly can go outside of those ranges. And genetics are going to be able to take it. Some will be able to take higher than other. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to do with that. But as far as pH, checking the runoff of that, again, it gives you a general idea of the pH in the medium.
Sure.
You could do a runoff test or you could do a slurry test. Some people will take off some of the top layer of soil, put it into a cup or something, add in some distilled water, let it sit there for however long, and then take a test that way. So there's two different ways to measure it, but it's really just to give you a general idea of what's in the medium, you know what I mean, to make sure you're in those proper ranges, because I think you and I both know if your pH is off, it inhibits some of the nutrients from being uptaken, right? If it's too low, it inhibits some nutrients. Too high, it inhibits some nutrients. So yeah, that's why I was just kind of curious on your avenue if you did monitor the pH or ppm-EC in any value, in any way. I mean, so it's interesting to hear how you go about it.
Yeah, I've gotten quite lazy about the pH. Maybe I just have, I've been here for 12 years now as far as in this town. I'm familiar with the water, and I'm just able to dial it in, I guess. But I don't use a pH meter anymore. And I will say I've been growing since 1991. I definitely wasn't growing to the point where I had $300 to sink in a pH meter for a long time. I would use those you can get them. It's like a little $5 pH test kit. It's got the little bottle of droppers, and you drop a couple drops in there, and it gives you essentially just a color, whether it's red for super acid, almost blue for super basic. Believe it or not, if you're on a budget, you can certainly test your pH and get it within, a half of a point, a quarter of a point, within, with something really simple like that. So, like I said, I'm trying to make gardening really accessible to anyone. Under $100, you should be able to put together a little system for your balcony anyhow.
Yeah, I completely agree. You can definitely get away with those small test kits. I actually have the same thing for my pool, my swimming pool. I use that to test the pH and make sure that's balanced. The same stuff is being done there.
I'm from Florida.
Okay,
I definitely
cool.
managed my family's pool for since I was 8 years old.
It's fun. It can be fun. But anyways, let's get back on topic of Hempy Buckets. I know you wanted to talk about those. Can you talk about, explain in detail of what Hempy Buckets are and how you grow in them?
It's just super simple concept. I learned about it. I think there is a guy named Hempy. At least there was. And it's just a sip bucket. I don't know if you ever go when you go to Walmart or Home Depot. Most of the buckets, they have like a little lip on the bottom that you can actually water there. And then the idea, you water from the bottom. There's maybe a couple inch reservoir that holds that water, and then it slowly wicks up. And it uses capillary action of the soil to wick up and feed the roots. And it always keeps those roots at an even, once you dial it in, keeps those roots at an even moisture. It's the perfect moisture. I'll dig down into a Hempy bucket. I'll grab some soil that's in there or some cocoa. I'll squeeze it. And just a little bit of water will come out. It's just that perfect moisture. And like I said, plants need air. They need air for those roots to breathe, for those microbes to live. They need water and they need nutrients. So giving them plenty of air is definitely a big deal. Definitely cool. A Hempy bucket is just, so we'll say this is the size of a container right here. We'll say it's a normal container. You just go 2 inches up, and you just put a little hole in there. You can use a drill, If you don't have a drill, you can use a damn steak knife. Don't sue me. But you're just basically I take a 5-gallon bucket, and just one of those Home Depot buckets. If you find a black one from the grocery store, it's better just because it protects the roots a little bit. You don't want light getting to your roots. But 2 inches up, you just drill a little hole in there, maybe a 3/8 inch hole. The idea is you're going to fill right to the hole. 2 inches, you're going to fill it with perlite. I like the chunky perlite, but just perlite right to 2 inches. And then you just fill the rest with soil. That's the simple Hempy bucket. I use cocoa, modified cocoa. And then the idea is you just water it until water comes out that little hole. Basically what that means, when you water till water comes out that little hole, you've filled up that little 2-inch layer of perlite on the bottom. You've given yourself a little 2-inch reservoir. You go back and your soil is perfectly moist until that reservoir goes, and then you just go water it again. It maybe gives you an extra couple days or something. But the most important thing is it keeps that the soil evenly moist. It doesn't take very long for it to balance out. And it's just such a simple way to grow. Just the 5-gallon bucket, it gives you you can go away for the weekend, and it just affords you a little bit of extra time between waterings, and it keeps that soil at a nice, evenly moist level, which is really important when you don't know and you're trying maybe overwatering, underwatering. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. I remember reading about Hempy Buckets way back when I first started in 2010-ish. I think I've seen people doing 100% perlite in theirs. Have you done 100% perlite, or you just do the bottom bit perlite and then above that cocoa?
I just do the cocoa. I have been experimenting. Honestly, it's pretty cool. We actually started this thing. My newest project is called 420 Grow Lab. It's an open source challenge, basically to the growers community. We've got a great community called the DGC that hangs out and shares all their grow tips with us. But it's just an open source project to come up with the simplest system for growing good quality medicine. And it's the goal is to I put my basic Hempy system up there, and everybody's coming up with mods. It's so much of my emails busting open. It's overloading my email. So we're making this site, but the idea is that you can spend, whether it's, you go buy one of those monster garden kits or $500 or $600 for kind of everything you need to get started. But just to be able to go, or whether you hopefully go to your local grow store and support them and spend a few $100, get, a 2x4 light and a fan. You spend $700-800 and you're able to start growing. I mean, that's the idea behind it. So I have the simple Hempy bucket system. There's all sorts of mods. There's folks that are cutting 55-gallon drums out, and instead of using perlite as a media, they're using, one guy's using sand. Shout out to Ray with the Hempy Buckets, man. He's using sand as a wick. And then there's a difference in a Hempy bucket between what you use in the bottom and then what you use as far as the cocoa media, the media up top. So the wick really seems to be with cocoa where a lot of the innovation is coming, whether you're using perlite, whether you're using sand. There's all sorts of people trying to expanded clay balls, but people are kind of playing with that. The best media up top, though, is cocoa as far as I'm concerned, some kind of amended cocoa.
That's cool. Sounds like it makes things a lot easier. I'll have to try out Hempy Buckets sometime in the future. I think that would be really fun, do something new.
Plants haven't been growing in perlite for millions of years, billions of years. They've been growing in soil, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so the symbiotic relationships, the relationship, like I said, if you think about what perlite is, we like it because it lets so much air in. When we talk about bacteria, bacteria it finds a way. Nature fills a vacuum, like we said. So you're leaving those roots with a lot of places to get pathogens from the air. So it's a bit more dangerous than if you're surrounding them, with a mycorrhizae coating, but still, we put cocoa in there, and then we put a bunch of organic material to at least simulate soil with the castings.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a good point. It's a really good point. All right, Scotty, so kind of wrapping things up, we've covered a lot of easy things to do when growing in cocoa in particular. A lot of good information here. How can the listeners find you, and what do you have upcoming in the future?
Dude Grows Show. If you like hearing me run my mouth, which I'm sorry, I feel like I ran my mouth a little too much today, but I love your show. I listen to it all the time. I watch it, and I was just really excited to be here, man. Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate the offer, sir. Dudegrows.com, real easy way to find me. Realgrowers.com is where I sell Recharge, but better to just type Recharge or yell Real Growers Recharge into your phone if you want to learn anything about that. And I will tell you, I'm kind of psyched. Me and my buddy Banner over here we have this goal of simplifying growing. I got Banner growing. I traded him for a website about 5-6 years ago, got him started growing. And it's so much fun to see the evolution of him into a great grower. It's like, I want to spread that. That's what the Dude Grows show is about. And that's what hopefully I do in this 420 Grow Lab, 420growlab.com. But like I said, it's just an open source project to make the simplest growing system we can. We're going to crowdsource it. We're going to share these mods. Like I said, I'm going to put up my basic system and let people mod it from there. I'm actually actively working on some mods right now. So that's actually what got me mostly excited right now.
Awesome. Sounds good. That's really exciting. So I will leave a link to Scotty's channel down in the description section below. If you enjoyed this video, click that like button. Try to get as many likes as possible. That's going to help get more people to view this video or show up in recommended. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review. I think we're about to hit 100, or we just passed 100 ratings and reviews. So thank you to everyone who have left a rating and review on there. Share it. Sharing is caring. Good places you can share it is Reddit. Facebook groups. There's a lot of different places that you can share this, and thank you to everyone who shares this podcast. Scotty, thank you once again for coming on to this podcast. It has really been an honor. You're an inspirational person in this field, so thank you so much for coming on and spreading the knowledge about what you do when keeping it simple growing a cocoa. So thank you once again.
It is such a joy to do this and to be able to connect with everybody, connect with the community, keep some people company in the grow, have an impact, maybe have some folks learn a couple things. It is an absolute joy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Peace.